Mr. Speaker, we commend this bill to the House.
Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You can tell from the discussion in this House the extraordinarily, I guess, controversial and competent discussions we have in the Regulatory Review Committee from time to time under our esteemed leader, who gets through on a bad day in 15 minutes. Nonetheless, it's a takes quite a lot longer than that to get through the real business of the House, though. Quite clearly the opposition doesn't understand the intelligence. The opposition doesn't understand the intelligence of our whips, for a start. Mr. Speaker, it's a great pleasure for me to take a call on the subordinate legislation confirmation and validation bill first reading. The legislation may seem a little spurious to some, but it is one of those tools this Parliament uses to ensure democracy proceeds in New Zealand in a smooth and proper manner. I want to take a little bit of time, I guess unlike the members of the opposition, to talk about the reason for these levies and charges that are imposed here, and talk about the relevance of one or two of them, particularly under the Animal Products Act, which looks at charging for inspection and around hourly rates and vet inspections of animal exports, and it particularly relates in this case to our equine industry. The equine industry in New Zealand is about $160 million export industry. Every one of these 3,500 odd horses that leave the country are inspected under this very piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker. So I think it's very relevant to some parts of our industry. I think also when you look at things like navel oranges or kiwi fruit, navel oranges, particularly in respect of Gisborne, so a very important export from the Gisborne area, Bay of Plenty, of course, with its kiwi fruit, both of which provide levies back to their parent bodies, which help to develop further the agricultural industry in New Zealand. And of course we get on to FAR, which deals with almost all of the seed industry in New Zealand in one form or another. And for the benefit of Leanne Dalzell, of course, she might not have eaten maize silage, but maize silage really is the ruminant variety of muesli. And often they add a little bit of cream or whatever to it. Certainly a very valuable part of what we do in New Zealand agriculture. The other thing that particularly appealed to me was this piece of legislation deals with pensions, Mr. Speaker, and I'm just hoping that they will last a little longer. And I was intrigued to see that it imposes a 1.77% increase to pensions, and I'm figuring in 5 years' time, when I get to that stage, it will have gone up by about another 9%, which I'm quite looking forward to. So, Mr. Speaker, for me this is a very relevant piece of legislation, and I'm not qualified to enter the debate as to whether or not we should be discussing this in the House, or whether there are much better ways to do it. I suspect there are much better ways of dealing with this stuff, but nonetheless some of the bits and pieces that are picked up in this legislation are very important, not only from a revenue perspective for the government, but from a revenue perspective for all of those organisations that collect levies and fees that enable them to operate, to carry out their research, to further develop our agricultural industry. So, Mr. Speaker, I have no problem commending this piece of legislation to the House, and I look forward to the intense discussion we'll have at the Regulatory Review Committee on this issue. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend this to the House and wish it well as it goes through. Thank you.
Dennis O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr.